Hey people, happy Saturday. So, this is the video that I promised, I said I was going to make last week, when I saw some more information about how they're going to make even stricter rules around cancer and other diseases when it comes to the 1939 Cancer Act. Before we get to that, as always, if you're watching on YouTube later on, please hit subscribe so you don't miss anything. Watching on Facebook, please share, like this video with many people you think may benefit from it. Same on Instagram. Now, I want to get into this because this is, when you think about it and break it down logically, it's absolute madness. And unfortunately, because we've been so brainwashed to believe that doctors know best when it comes to our health, and they've got so many laws around it, that we just do what they tell us to do, even when our brain and body tells us otherwise. And especially when it comes to the 1939 Cancer Act that most people don't even know about, which states, by law, you can only say you can cure or treat cancer with chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery. Now, chemotherapy is uranium. It's basically like carpet bombing the body and hoping only the good stuff grows back. It's complete and utter madness. It's why it's got such a high death rate, and it's why 85 or 80 to 85% of oncologists out there asked said they wouldn't take it. Radiation is literally cooking the body, so they're literally just human cookers. And surgery is obviously opening up the body and cutting out tumours, which a lot of time is completely unnecessary. And all these things greatly suppress the immune system that's already been suppressed by the toxic way of living, which is why cancers develop. And if you're going to study cancer, the research that I've looked at shows it takes 10 to 15 years to develop cancer. And the tumour is not actually a cancer, it's a symptom of the cancer. And it's why if you cut the tumour out, cancer comes back, because you haven't got to the underlying root problem. Now, they're trying to make rules around this when it comes in terms of, they're trying to make it even more stringent about what people like myself, natural health practitioners or homeopaths or whatever it is, can say around disease. Now, can't sit here saying you cure disease, because the body does that. The body will always do that. It's why people like myself get results in all these things. We've dealt with many advanced diseases before. I talk about Helen, who was given 100 days to live. I always talk about her as a gold standard, because told if she doesn't do what they tell her to do, she won't be here within 3 months. She ignored that advice, like many people have done before. Millions of people have done before, which I'm going to go into, and they're still here living life. And the ones that took chemotherapy and radiation, unfortunately, they're in the ground. And there's many doctors that have gone into this. Now, this is why, and on the article that I saw that was written, they said that we're going to have stricter rules around what people can say around cancer, etc., because of a few bogus treatments that have led to people dying. And this is where it absolutely cracks me up, because a few bogus treatments that have led to people dying. Probably these treatments were taken by people after they tried chemotherapy and radiation, where their body's been so destroyed by that they couldn't do anything, and then they try and blame the natural remedies. Or the fact that over 400,000 people a year die at the hands of doctors for the right pill prescribed for the right illness. That's without medical mistake. And without the millions and millions of people that chemotherapy and radiation destroy and kill every year, without the people they lose on the table. Now, and then cancer, it's very hard to talk about cancer because so many people have been affected by this. I know I have. My nan walked in the hospital, absolutely fine. She'd had a tumour, but she walked in there fine. Her body could deal with it. She was absolutely fine. 6 weeks later, she was dead because of what they did with her chemotherapy and radiation. It's a story I hear many times. And cancer would never kill her in 6 weeks. It just wouldn't. And this is something you have to be really aware of. Now, I'm going to talk about a clinic here. There's many clinics. One of my mentors, Dr. Edward Group, down in Dallas, Texas, he was helping people overcome advanced disease and cancer, so much so that the FDA used to raid him 3 times a year and said, you can't be doing this. And one of the first questions that he asked his clients when they went there was, do you know why you've got cancer? And they'd say, no. And he'd say, well, they haven't told you why you've got cancer? And they'd say, no. And then he'd go in to explain why their body had cancer, and talk in terms of diet, EMF radiation, sleep cycles, their body not being able to get rid of toxins. If your body's not getting rid of toxins, then men have got 4 ways of getting rid of them: sweat, urine, stool and breath. Women have got a fight, got a menstrual cycle as well. If your body's not getting rid of toxins that way, the body will hold them, or they'll try and push them out of the skin. Many other ways: not getting enough sun exposure, not doing the things they love, having no purpose in life. There's a million and one things that can cause cancer, and he'll go through these practices. But the FDA used to rate him so much that he actually had to move some of his clinics to Mexico. Very much the same as Harry Hoxsey, who many of you probably haven't heard of. And Harry Hoxsey he's actually a book out called When Healing Becomes a Crime. And he was someone who was curing cancer for many, many years in America. And because he was doing it so successfully, the AMA actually went after him. So what his story was he was a naturopathic physician that figured out a cure to cancer when his grandfather actually healed their horse of cancer. So what happened is they had one of their horses that they got cancer, and he was actually in a pen, and they thought, he's going to die, we might as well just let him roam. And what they noticed when this horse started to roam was that he started to eat a lot of things that horses didn't actually usually eat. So things like, which I mean in the past, he'd eat things like thistle and flowers and all sorts of stuff they don't normally eat. And within a few months, the horse was completely cured of cancer. So his father was writing down all the stuff that this horse was eating. And he was like, okay. And he started to harvest these plants, and he made a formula that turned out to actually be a legitimate cure for cancer. And it was so successful that the AMA, so the American Medical Association, actually approached Hoxsey and said, look, we want to buy this formula off you to give to people. Exactly, Emma. We want to buy this formula off you so we can give it to people. And Hoxsey was like, that's absolutely fine. You can buy it off me, give it to people under one stipulation. And that stipulation is, if people come to you and they can't afford the treatment, then you have to give it to them anyway. You have to help them heal. And the AMA flat out refused and said, no, we won't do that. It'll be our formula. We'll have the right to refuse treatment to people. Hoxsey said, well, then I'm not going to sell it to you. Those are my terms. And so the AMA then said, well, if you're not going to sell it to us, we're going to put you out of business. And this led to Hoxsey going into a long drawn-out battle with the AMA and the FDA. It was all over the media at the time. And what they didn't realise, though, was Harry Hoxsey actually had a lot of money from oil, and his whole family had a lot of money from the oil business, and so he actually used to carry around $10,000 in cash in his pocket wherever he'd go. So whenever they used to put him in jail, he just had the $10,000 to pay out the bond for the bail. And sometimes he'd actually stay in jail on purpose, so his patients would come down and start to sing his name and give him food, etc. And it can become so embarrassing for the police station and for the law enforcement that they actually had to let him go. And one of his prosecutors, his brother, actually developed cancer. The brother went to Hoxsey, who cured him of cancer, and then the prosecutor became Hoxsey's legal representative. And he was actually the first person to beat the American Medical Association in a lawsuit ever. And how did he win? He won because he kept on bringing more and more patients into the courthouse who kept on saying, well, he cured me of cancer. He cured me. Thousands and thousands of people. They couldn't deny it. I mean, senators, judges, doctors endorsed his treatment. 2 federal courts actually upheld it, the therapeutic value of his treatment in court. But they still went after him and tried to put him. This is what happens when the people, there was a guy called Maurice Fishbein who was going after him because he hated the fact that Hoxsey was actually taking away money from the medical industry. And this is what they do. They have laws to try and protect what they do, even though they know it doesn't work. And Harry Hoxsey actually, in the end, completely outed this guy called Maurice Fishbein, who was running the American Medical Association, and found out he actually failed medical school, and all he could do was administrative work, if I can speak, and actually made a laughing stock of them. But this led to them finally going after him, keep on going after him, and it run Hoxsey so much money. In the end, he actually had to move his clinics to Mexico, where I think they still are. And this is just one person, and then they start going after lots of people like this in the natural health industry because it costs them money. Every single cancer patient to them is worth £300,000. I mean, there was a doctor last year who who I think his annual salary was around 100,000, and he bumped it up to 26 million a year by giving people chemotherapy that didn't need it. He's now doing lifetime in jail. So this is why you have to remember all these things they put around this. It's not like a couple of people have died of bogus treatments. Millions die every year from their treatments, okay? Treatments. Literally trying to carpet bomb the body and hoping only the good stuff grows back. Chemotherapy is an absolute health disaster. You actually want to help the immune system. You know, what we do is very different. Like health coaches do, it's very different to doctors. You know, they treat disease, cut, burn, poison, medicate. Whereas what we do is we treat a person who has a disease, because we know a healthy body can't have disease. Health and disease are like oil and water. And if you want, you can go on to www.thetruthaboutcancer.com, where a guy there, Ty Bollinger, 7 members of his family died of cancer. He was like, what the hell, this can't be right, you know, this can't be right. And so he went around the world and talked to every doctor out there that was healing cancer, and he put together a 9-part documentary series that will go through exactly what you need to do to help the body heal. It's not just of cancer, it's of anything, you know. Whatever your predisposition to disease is, someone can get cancer, someone else can get Alzheimer's, someone else could get a gut issue, a skin issue, whatever it is. And this is the thing. And I've got a big section of this in my book, www.thechronicfatiguesolution.com, talking about how President Nixon waged the war on cancer. I think it was in 1974, and that was when it was like 1 in 8 Americans were getting cancer, and now we're at 1 in 2, even though they're pumping all this money into cancer and cancer research. Cancer research only uses, I think, 40% of its money, it might be 40 or 60, anyway, somewhere between there, of its money to actually go into research. And that research is actually just paying pharmaceutical companies. They're not actually going into anything else they could do. They're just paying pharmaceutical companies to try and find the magic bullet cure that they'll never find, because they don't want to. Cancer is a massive, massive business. It's a $200 billion a year industry in the US alone. This is why you need to understand this. And understand when they come out there and they start putting these articles out saying they need a stronger test on bogus. I'm sure there's some nutcases out there that say they can cure cancer by doing random things. But when it comes to actually principles that create health and create a healthy body, like I always talk about, intelligent exercise, eating organic food or as high as real food as possible. You've got this doctor out there that people keep tagging me in, he's an absolute wally. He's talking about how food can't detoxify the body. Well, funny enough, you know, Chlorella spirulina chelates out metals, so does strawberries, the only fruit that's got the seed on the outside. And you've got things like garlic and ginger, dark green leafy vegetables, all putting out different toxins. You've got a whole host of things you can go into. Clays, helping the body, bentonite clays. So it's just complete nonsense when they're talking about this. But because he's been educated by the medical industry, who do an hour and a half on nutrition in 7 years, of course you're not going to know about these things. And then you see that these people, they just go after people that have gone on down a natural route, even though most of these people have been so destroyed by the treatments they've already tried that their bodies is in no place to heal, and that's the truth. If you start to just do the practices that heal the body, and also a massive thing is this: if you think that you'll never heal, you more likely never will. And this is unfortunately why a lot of people have been so brainwashed into thinking the only thing they can do is go to the doctor. That when that industry fails them, then they don't think anything else can help, and that's a big thing as well. So I have to really understand what they're doing with these things. They're always protecting their profits, like they have been doing with this COVID situation. You know, all the ventilation, all the stuff they do in there, it's all for money. The more COVID cases they put down, it's all for money. It's a business. And this is what I always say to people. You have to understand they don't celebrate when the drug sales go down, just when they go up. So you have to understand this. It's a business, and they're there for your money. They're not interested in your health. They're just not. You know, it's a sick care business, and it's why it's got a real like It doesn't make sense for them to get you healthy. It's why you go on drugs and they don't take you off them. You go on more drugs or different drugs, or you take more pills. You never come off them. And then they say, oh, you can't come off them because you've got this condition. And it just doesn't, when you think about it logically, you know, it completely makes sense to me. But I used to be the person, I used to think you could eat whatever you wanted, you go to the doctor, get a pill. I only got into this because I was very ill myself. And if you haven't heard my journey, then you can probably go, you can go to the Revive Yourself with Ryan Martin podcast and listen to episode 1. Or I've got lots of other episodes out there. But I was very, very ill for 5 years. They almost destroyed me. And I used to think that it didn't matter what you ate. Food was just energy, in and out. But it turns out that's completely wrong. Food is not just calories, it's energy in formation. And that food talks to every cell of your body. And that stress, if you're under chronic stress all the time, makes a massive difference. You know, if you're constantly in a stressful state in your mind, it's going to affect your body as well. So you're going to be in your fight, flight, or freeze nervous system rather than your rest and digest. So you'll be in your sympathetic nervous system rather than your parasympathetic. And it's fine to be in your sympathetic nervous system if you're stressed and you're running away from a tiger, for example. But most people are in that all day long, worrying about bills, jobs, this, that, the other, eating food while they're watching TV. You know, it's stressful for the body, eating food really quickly, so the body's not even in its nervous system to digest that food. Then they wonder why they get gas, wind, pain, bloating, all these things. Okay, I can go on and wax lyrical about this for ages, but this is why you have to take with a huge pinch of salt what they're saying. And I realise it's all a business and it's all to make them money. And when they come out and start saying things about putting stricter laws down about what people can say, you know, they're already taking things off what you can put in. Remember, this is the other thing about, they talk about bogus treatments. A lot of people don't understand that these companies like GlaxoSmithKline, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, etc., they bastardize, so their synthetic toxic medicine, which may have a molecule from a plant in there, which they do because obviously they can't patent nature, so they have to do that. They send their representatives down into the jungle, into Peru, to talk to shaman. They think this is all crazy. They say, oh, it's all quackery and etc. And if you look into where that comes from, Rockefeller trying to like just get rid of chiropractors and natural remedies, etc. Because it's going to take away from their money and what they can make. They say that shaman that do talk to the plants, you know, it sounds a bit woo in the esoteric. They talk to the plants to see which ones can heal us. They send their representatives down to the jungle to talk to these shaman and pay them money to actually get to get the information off these shaman. And then they sit there and say that shamanic people and natural healing's quackery, even though they take a plant molecule and they put it into the medication. And they try and extract certain molecules because they say, oh, this is what works. It's like, no, the reason plants and food, etc. work is because it's in its whole form, and you can't just extract one thing out. It doesn't work like that. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make this video just to make people really, really aware of what's coming in terms of how they're just trying to shut knowledge and people down. You go out there and you can look into lots of different people. There's Dr. Nick Gonzalez out there as well, who was doing this for years and years. I think his mentor before that was the guy who was actually working on Steve McQueen, and Steve McQueen was almost destroyed by the conventional methods, went to see Gonzalez's mentor, started to get a lot better, and then when the doctors come in and said, you can't do this, it's quackery, they took Steve McQueen off of the natural healing methods that he was on, and they started pumping him full of chemicals again, and unfortunately that was the end of Steve McQueen. And it's happened many, many, many times before. So you just have to look at this with a logical brain a lot of the time and think, who gains from this? Who gains from you not eating real food and exercising intelligently and getting sunlight and being out amongst nature and doing things you love and having clean water, having cold showers and calling all this stuff quackery that's been around for thousands of years and created health in billions of people, millions, billions of people, whatever it is? Who gains from you not learning that information, and who gains from you just taking their pills or their chemotherapy, radiation and surgery? You know, there's a place for it, of course there is. Like, I'm not saying that when it comes to car crashes or acute injuries, like, fantastic, and you know, that's what they're there for. But when it comes to chronic illness and advanced disease, it just doesn't make sense for them to heal you, because you are a pound note to them or a dollar, and that's what they're there to make. And it's why, you know, you've seen them pay out billions to people who their products have destroyed. You know, I mean, the CDC, the Center for Disease in America, you know, they're the ones who advocated people painting the house with DDT and insecticide, which led to so many illnesses and all these other drugs that they've promoted, Vox and asbestos before, vaccines, which, you know, the science is settled. You have to realise science is just the latest form of ignorance, and this is why it's never settled. And you can't put things like thimerosal, aluminium, carbolic acid, aborted fetal cells, MSG, antifreeze into things and think that that's going to create health. It never will, and it doesn't matter who you are, it never will. And when I've actually asked doctors about this, they can't believe it's in them. and they actually ask why that's in them. And so anyway, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I just wanted to put this out there so people start to realise what's really at play here. And when they start to see these articles from so-called doctors or newspapers talking about these bogus treatments, go and look at the Hoxsey cure for cancer, Hoxsey clinic. Type into Quant or DuckDuckGo Hoxsey clinic documentary and watch it. I actually put some excerpts on my story yesterday. You can actually, if we go back and watch my story and you can type in the bar, you'll see it. You can watch it, find out all about it. He's not the only one. You've got Gerson therapy out there. I've been doing the same thing for ages, Dr. Gerson. Then you've got Weston A. Price, who's doing it for years and years and years. I mean, there's so many I could go into. And a lot of these doctors go on the missing list. So anyway, just be very, very... start using like this more. I know that we sometimes be so bought into it, into what they tell us, that it's hard to even break free from what they say. But when you start to use your gut and your mind and actually start to critically think and start to wonder, what's going on here and who gains to benefit from this? It starts to, when you start to follow the money down these things, it starts to open up doors, and you start to have more and more questions around what's going on here. Like these vaccines, they're going to be trying to pump out for COVID. We've had vaccines for every other disease, and we've still got them. And when you look at the charts for all the vaccines, you can see that, like the polio vaccine, I think it was it's coming down all the way, and it got introduced here. And the countries that were cured of polio twice as fast were the ones that didn't have the polio vaccine. You can look at the measles and all these other things, and smallpox. When the vaccine was introduced, smallpox deaths went up again. You need to look at the real charts, not the bogus ones that these companies claim, and the doctors that they pay. As I've said before, most scientists these days are modern-day prostitutes. You can pay them for whatever result they want you to get, and they're much more interested in having a nice house and a nice car than talking about the truth, because their paycheck is staple to the companies they're working for. And most people, it takes a really strong person to go against their company and to lose their paycheck, because they've got bills to pay. And I completely understand it. It's one of the lucky positions that I'm in with my business. And a lot of people that follow me, they're like, Ryan, I don't believe in any of this stuff, but I've got to do this because my company say I've got to do it, and I get it. I'm my own boss. I have my own company. And I can say these things, and I will walk the walk, and as well as I'll talk the talk, and that's fine. But I have to be aware of these things. And once you're aware of it, don't take it all in and don't let it affect your day-to-day life, but be aware of it and then make the necessary changes that you can do and affect your life as much as you can, and just be aware of what's going on. And the more people are aware, the more these conversations come out, and the more people, don't listen to the mainstream media. 6 corporations that run it, of course, they're going to pump it out because they're all in bed with each other. These adverts that they put out are funded. America and New Zealand can actually put adverts for medication on TV. They can't do that here, but they can. And when you start looking into this, it's just obvious what's going on. And then you set something in the paper, and then the newspapers, unfortunately, the majority of people read these things, the rags, they've been talking absolute nonsense for years and years, and it's the same fight that was going on 40 years ago is going on now, the left versus the right, or this and that, and trying to call people quacks, and going after people like Andrew Wakefield. There's another great film out now called the 1986 Act, talking about when they took away the ability for people to sue the vaccine companies. They give them full indemnity from being sued and not liable at all. And when you look into these vaccines, they've been tested for 2 days, and if you get a reaction after 2 days, it wasn't the vaccine, and I think the most was 5 or 6 days. It's just complete lunacy what they can get away with. They've got absolutely no responsibility. And when you take responsibility away from companies, they will literally do whatever they can to get their product to market, and they won't care who they hurt. And they don't have any placebo trials. And also, these vaccines are made and they were tested on humans that are superhuman, okay? So that people that are never ill, no family history of illness, never been ill themselves, no allergies, etc. All men, no women, can't be a pregnant woman, for example. And these people getting tested are still coming up ill. And these are like the superhumans of our race. So imagine what you do to the average person who's ill, fat, overweight, got allergies, on medication. You just got to look into this. If you haven't listened to Robert Kennedy Jr. speak on this, he's an absolute wealth of knowledge on this when it comes to this. He's been going deep into vaccine companies and vaccines for a long time. And then you've got other things, cancer, vaccines, whatever it is, whatever this illnesses are. And whenever a doctor comes out and goes against the grain, people say, oh, he's a quack. Why? Because he's still a doctor, but he doesn't go with the mainstream. He goes with what's truth. Someone like Dr. Dale... Bresnan, who's got a book out there called The End of Alzheimer's. He's been curing Alzheimer's for years. And there's loads of these people. I mean, I've interviewed 156 of them on my podcast. And I'm going to be interviewing even more of them. And it's why I put results up. For me, it's not just to say, oh, look at the results we're getting. It's also to tell people that are going through illnesses, look, they can heal, you can heal. You just got to come at things from a different perspective. And you're not going to heal by taking toxic synthetic medication, especially not more and more and more of it. It's just going to create a toxic internal environment. It's going to allow for unfriendly bacteria to flourish. It's going to mean that your cells of your body are going to be toxic. Your quality of life depends on how toxic you are. You've got 100,000 industrial toxins in the air. Then you're being blasted with EMFs all over the place, which, Dr. Makoto said, compared to 100 years ago, when he asked Ben Greenfield this question, he said, like, Ben, how much percentage do you think that we've gone up in exposure to the EMFs in the last 100 years? And Ben said 400%. And he's like, higher. He said, what, 600%? It's like, no, 10 to the 18. So that's 10 to 18 million% more than we were 100 years ago. And so this is the other things you're getting in. You've got to look at your food quality, being sprayed with pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, rodenticides, chemical fertilizer, glyphosate, which is an antibiotic, being sprayed all over your food. It's what Bayer have just paid out 10.8 billion for in Roundup, to say they've seen the cancer and destruction it's caused to people. You don't pay out 10.8 billion to people if it's not doing anything to people. And people don't understand how much a billion is. For example, 1 million seconds is 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 34 years. That's how much. And Bayer took over Monsanto knowing that they had to pay this out. That's how much. They got 60 billion in the bank. 10 billion to them is small change. And so you need to look into these companies and what they're doing. And like Johnson & Johnson have been, every single year since 2000, they've had a lawsuit. They've paid out billions to people. They knew asbestos was in their baby powder, and they still gave it to people. And unfortunately, because you're a good person, you don't think that there's people out there that could do these things. It's very hard for good people to understand why people would be that evil, or to even understand evil. But when it comes down to it, it's the bottom line. It's money, and it's control. Like these masks, we know these masks do nothing. Absolutely nothing. You've got scientists out there that are all bought and paid for saying they do this and do that. Talk about surgeons. Surgeons wear masks so they don't spit in someone's wound, and so in case they cut an artery, they may get blood in their face. Nothing to do with catching a virus, quote unquote. It's nothing to do with that, and it never has been. And there's studies in the New England Journal, Medical Journal, and etc. Been around for all talking about this. And most people know it's absolute nonsense, but they're doing it to conform. And unfortunately, some people have been so brainwashed into doing this that they continue to do it and believe in these things. And when you look at the stats and what they're doing, none of the recommendations make sense. We can have bars open until 12 o'clock, but they have to shut at 12 o'clock because of the virus. Oh, because after 12 o'clock, the virus comes out, does it? All right, it's got a curfew until 12. Or you can have 6 people at a table, but not 7. It's just absolute nonsense. And so when you look into these companies, etc., it gives you more of an idea of what's going on. Look into the history of them. And as I said before, don't use Google, because Google are in bed with these companies. Go into DuckDuckGo or Quant or I think it's Ecosa. They're all good ones. Because Google will be hiding these monopoly tech companies. If you knew how much they spent to hide the truth from you, it'd send you crazy. So just be aware of this, and it's why I say to people, use Quant, use the browser Brave instead of Google Chrome. If you want to go into that, The Creepy Line on Amazon Prime is a great film to see what Google are doing, and you'll just understand how they can dictate the narrative. And they're more powerful than the government now, because they can actually dictate what you can watch and what you can see, and it's book burning like they do with my channel. They stop. I've got followers and they won't even put it out to most of you. Same as the stuff you post, and you've got to be really careful. And they fact check, like Pontina fact check people who are actually been paid millions by Facebook, and they say, independent third party. Of course you are. Being fact checked by them is like getting a nutrition degree from General Mills. It means nothing. And so you have to understand who funds these degrees and who funds these companies and etc. to understand how the narrative is played. And if you go back in history and you watch this, history is this one. It's all about conspiracy theory. It's just look at history books. It just tells you these things. It's not conspiracy theory. It's just facts. History is just one conspiracy after another. People trying to get to the top of the throne. So yeah. Anyway, I could wax lyrical about this all day, so I'm probably off on a bit of a tangent. So just be really, really careful about who you're listening to this. And I always talk about, I've got no agenda apart from getting you to be as healthy and happy as possible. That's why I put the content out I do. I want you to just to know and just to understand this, because then you can take it on board. And when you start, you see the results we get and other health coaches get by doing this stuff. And I understand it can be very confusing and there's so much conflicting information. That's why I always say, if you can, work with someone. If it's not myself, find someone that you resonate with. If you are looking for help, send me an email at www.ryan@reviveyourself.co, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Or send me an inbox on here if you're looking for help with your health. But there's so much out there that you can do to learn about this. And once you start learning, start doing these things and becoming the person that just lives this way, it's just a game changer, and everything just makes more sense. And when you stop reading the paper and listening to the news, and you actually start exposing yourself to like good energies, more and more of these people come into your life, you start the news becomes a joke. Like sometimes I skip through channels and I look at it and I'm just like, how can people even listen to this? It's such nonsense, such propaganda. Flashing lights and this, that, the other, and one person angry at another person. It just riles people up, and when people are angry, they're in their mammalian or reptile brain, so they're not actually thinking logically, and it just causes division, divide and conquer. And it's the same as always: black versus white, rich versus poor, left versus right, vaccine versus anti-vaccine, and it's like anti-vaccine. I think it's just anti-stupidity, not taking a vaccine, so we rushed through. I mean, the vaccines, injuries that they've caused, they've paid out $6 billion now, vaccine companies, for what they've done. That's only the claims they have to pay out and claims they have to talk about, not the ones that they push under the carpet. It's just anti-stupidity. And as I think it's Robert Kennedy Jr. talks about. He said he's been trying to get mercury out of fish for like 20 years, and no one calls him anti-fish. And it's so true. It's like the same with these ingredients in vaccines. Why do you want these poisons in them? And then you need to talk about this, but I can talk about this all day long. And yeah, the news is a joke. I mean, the news is just what they want you to hear, right? Be nice if they did all the good things that go on in the world, but they don't look at that. And they can manipulate it any which way they want, and they can cause division. And if you look at who runs it and the agendas are behind it, anyway. It's the same as everything. Remember, it's all a business. It's all to keep you scared and frightened. And when you're scared and frightened, you'll do anything to survive, because that's what humans do. You look at an animal, you go and see an animal in the wild, like a deer or a zebra running away from a lion. They will literally run into metal, maim themselves, do anything they can because they're in a frenzy, in a panic. And people doing this right now, they're giving away their civil liberties and last remaining freedoms because they're scared of something that has got a 0.00048% mortality rate. I mean, I lost a friend last year with pneumonia. Haven't lost anyone to COVID-19. For example, I don't even know anyone who's got it or who's had it. And that's obviously that's my experience. But I'm just saying, when you talk about deadly viruses, if it was deadly, you'd know people. You'd be like, oh my God, how many of your family members or how many of your friends have died from this, etc. It's not what's going on here. And so when you're scared though, and if you keep on listening to these things, these news, you're scared. They'll literally push your system into a point where you're chronically stressed, which raises cortisol levels chronically. And when your cortisol levels are chronically raised, it burns out your adrenals, and then you're more susceptible to disease and to illness because you're in a state of stress, and then unfriendly pathogens can come in. Your immune system's low, you won't digest food properly, you won't sleep properly, you won't heal, etc, etc, etc. So anyway, that's it for today, guys and girls. If you are looking for help with your health, then send me an inbox on here or send me an email to ryan@reviveyourself.co. Otherwise, I hope this helped. And if you are anyone who's got cancer, etc., please go to www.thetruthaboutcancer.com, watch that documentary, because it'll just give you an eye-opening experience. And I know what it's like. You go to the doctor and they tell you, oh, if you don't do this, you're going to die in so many days. And because people believe and put so much power into what doctors say, they will die in that many days. It's like, as we talked about before, you've got the placebo effect, which is 38 to 64% effective. And then you've got the nocebo effect. So placebo is like, you think something's going to work for you, it will. And you've got the nocebo effect, where if you think something's going to cause you harm, it will as well. And so you have to understand that. And if you think you're going to get ill, you will too. So turn off the news, stop reading the paper, get outside, get some fresh air, sunshine, eat some good food, spend some time with people you love, do something you love, listen to uplifting podcasts, get some exercise, and thanks, Lou. That's lovely. And and hydrate, get hot and cold therapy, get in a sauna. You know, people in Sweden, Finland, the men over there, they live 7 years longer than the men in average in Europe because they get sauna 4 to 7 times a week. Cold therapy as well. If you haven't seen the Iceman, the Wim Hof, then you need to. But cold therapy, get a cold shower a day. Start off with 20 seconds, build up to 2 minutes, and go on 2 to 5 minutes. Get a shiver reflex. And yeah, just do all the things that create health, okay? Anyway, that's it for today, people. Namaste, lots of love. Stay happy, stay healthy. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.